welcome to the Rundown Presents the Greatest NFL Team Ever tournament. We started off with 64 teams. We are now down to the final four, and this is the final episode in this series. I'm your host, Desmond Johnson, joined by my regular Rundown crew, Brandon Blakney, Hot Rod Funderburk. On the line, they picked this final four in the previous episode. You can check out all the episodes on the Sports Carolina Monthly YouTube channel, or just search for us on Facebook Watch. They are all there. Guys, we've had a long journey since the end of April when this thing started. 64 teams, some major upsets along the way, but the four I think that we ended up with here in the final four, I really can't argue about any of them making their way to the final four. Just real quick, if you've never watched this before, here's how this works. Brandon and Rod are going to judge a matchup between two teams from two different time periods. The higher seed has home field advantage, meaning the rules of that team in their era are what are applied to this particular game. If they both pick the same team, I don't really have much of a say in it, and that team moves on. If they split their vote, then I become the tiebreaker, and we'll debate and figure out which ones move on. In this episode, we'll have two Final Four matchups and the finale, the Super Bowl of Super Bowls between the two left standing. Guys, you ready to rock and roll?
Des, we ready to rock and roll,
man.
You said something about, you can't really argue about the four teams that are left to here. You're right. You can't argue one bit about the four teams, but I do have a bone to pick that there is one team that I think I would have had here had I had the opportunity. And that's the 1985 Chicago Bears.
Here we go.
That's the 85 Chicago Bears. They were
overall one seed.
Yes, sir.
They were the overall one seed. They were taken out. Yeah, they were taken out by the 1998 Minnesota Vikings in the biggest upset of this tournament. Yeah. You can watch that. Just find the episode with Aaron Gabriel and Brandon Blakney as judges, and it's a regional.
I would have to argue that both of those. I would have to argue that both of those judges must have never watched the 1985 Bears ever in their life.
Look, they were
at least not live anyway.
I mean, we all didn't watch them live.
I have to admit, in that episode, Aaron and Brandon convinced me by the time it was over that the Vikings could give the Bears some run in terms of what they were coming with the reasons why they picked them. But
they could have gave them some run, but that defense, the time period, 1985, 1985 rules.
I didn't really.
1985 rules.
I didn't really take into account that the game was being played in 1985, so I should have gave more of a credible look to the Bears having home field in that game. But it's
and
over
cold
now.
too. It would have been cold.
It would have been cold.
Outside, a dome team beats the Bears at home.
That was the thing.
In the cold.
That was the thing I didn't.
It already happened. They did it.
It already happened. So we got four left here. I didn't know which one I was going to start off with. I think one of them's more of a marquee than the other, but not by much. I mean, these are four. Well-worthy, deserving teams here.
Agreed.
The first matchup here. A one seed from the 49ers region, the 1989 San Francisco 49ers, taking on the 4 seed, the 2004 New England Patriots. And this is a tough matchup because while that 89 49ers team was, in my opinion, the best 49ers team with Joe Montana, and he had his full array of weapons in that matchup. You know, John Taylor's on that team. Jerry Rice is on that team. They had weapons. This is probably one of the more annoying 49er teams that I can remember in my lifetime just because they were so good. And then on the other side, you have the epitome of a team that just does their job in the 2004 New England Patriots, who, honestly, out of the 6 Super Bowls that the Patriots have won, this 2004 Patriots team might have had the best defense out of all of them. All the characters you know from the Patriots back in the day, Teddy Bruschi, Vince Wilfork's on this squad. My co-host on the Believe in Panther podcast, Tyrone Poole, was on this roster, but he was injured going into the Super Bowl, so keep that in mind. Ty Law, the other starting quarterback, was also injured going into the Super Bowl. And I don't know how you would use that in your evaluation. Are you looking at this as if the Patriots, the team they arrived at the Super Bowl with, or the team that they went through the season with? Because if you're looking at the team that got to the Super Bowl, they had Troy Brown back there at defensive back because Ty Law and Tyrone Poole were injured. If you're looking at through the season, then you got Ty Law and Tyrone Poole back there. So A little bit of a difference here. Rod, I'm going to let you go first on this one in terms of who you're selecting to move on to the final round between the San Francisco 49ers and the New England Patriots. This game, home field advantage goes to the the San Francisco 49ers, with them being the higher seed. So this game takes place under the rules of 1989 at Candlestick Park. So Rod would say Final Four matchup number one, 89 49ers taking on the 2004 New England Patriots.
This is a matchup I would have loved to have seen actually in real life, guys. The 89 49ers and the 2004 Patriots. I mean, you're talking about Joe Montana when he had perfected that West Coast offense. They had George Seifert, who was the second coach coming in, and he was, really leading this team. They had Roger Craig, who had over 1,000 yards rushing that year. He also had just under 500 yards passing. Then you had Jerry Rice, who's the epitome of an excellent wide receiver. His counterpart, who hurt so many people, John Taylor. And then you had Brent Jones at the tight end, who was that underneath weapon, just in case Joe Montana got caught, couldn't catch Rice or he couldn't catch John Taylor. And then you're talking about a defense, that had everybody from, oh my goodness, just Ronnie Lott, of course. And then you're talking about Don Griffith back there on the other side, Keena Turner at the linebacker, Mike Waters at the outside linebacker, Kevin Fagan up front playing on the defensive end. Even Pierce Holt was a heck of a guy up there.
I remember Pierce Holt.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I remember that name.
Yes, sir. And then Michael Carter, he was a nose guard. You could not move that guy in the middle. And he was something else, man. But I tell you what, the New England Patriots, I got to be honest with you, they had a heck of a team as well. You're talking about Tom Brady. In my opinion, Tom Brady wasn't quite at his prime, during this particular season or this team right here. Tom Brady was still, in my opinion, learning, trying to perfect that offense that Bill Belichick had going on up there. And I think what really elevated this offense during that time was Corey Dillon and the way he rushed the ball, because Corey Dillon had over 1,600 yards rushing this year. I mean, that right there alone lets you know that this was a running team, and they didn't necessarily have Tom Brady as the guy who would be bailing them out or the guy who they would catch and clutch, or Tom Brady. So, this team also relied on their defense, which included guys like you said, Ty Warren, Keith Traylor, Richard Seymour, Willie McGinnis, Mike Vrabel, Ty Law, all those guys in the back, including Rodney Harrison. And, I'll be honest with you, I think this game is going to come down to coaching. It's probably not going to come down to the players on the field, because I think the players are evenly matched up. And I have to be honest with you, maybe I didn't study as much as George Seifert as maybe I should have and what I know. But when it comes to Bill Belichick, even when he was all the way back with the Giants, and he said, hey, we're playing a faster team. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to put our wide receivers on the defense, because they're just going to be just as fast. Has the other team's wide, or has our wide receivers. You know what I'm saying? So it was crazy just the way Bill Belichick's mind thought, not only as a head coach, but even as an assistant coach with the Giants when they won their first Super Bowl. So, just under coaching, I'm just going to give a slight edge to the New England Patriots in an upset. And I'm talking about an upset where the score winds up being 24-23, where the Patriots win it on the last minute field goal.
That sounds like that 2004 Patriots team. It felt like every game they won was like an Adam Vinatieri field goal at the end to win it. So one vote for the Patriots. And, I was looking at the Final Four, and I was like, well, hell, the teams that are in the Final Four have all won 6 Super Bowls, 5 Super Bowls or whatnot, so they deserve to be there. So I'm not really surprised with that pick. But, Brandon, what you got, man? Are you looking at the 89 49ers, or are you looking at the 2004 New England Patriots?
We all know that Patriots team was extremely scrappy, and if it did come down to a field goal and special teams, I definitely would give the edge to Adam Vinatieri, arguably the greatest kicker in NFL history. But I don't think they're going to get to a chance to kick the game-winning field goal, because it's going to take a much more than a game-winning field goal to beat this 49ers team. This team is absolutely loaded in 1989. I think this is the better of the 49er teams, in just my humble opinion. You got Joe Montana, arguably the best player in the league that year, just going nuts in the playoffs, perfected that West Coast, had weapons. And I'm looking at this Patriots defense minus their starting cornerbacks, and I'm not really convinced that my man Troy Brown is going to be able to do anything with Jerry Rice or John Taylor. And then on top of that, you got to look at how they use Roger Craig also running the ball and ahead of his time receiving out the backfield as well. Serious problems to deal with on the offensive side. And then they're not giving up anything defensively either. You got Pro Bowlers at all three levels of this defense. Really headhunters, some of the best DBs in the game. Ronnie Lott leading that group. 442 points scored that year. 27.6 scored average a game. It's just too much. Guy McIntyre, a stud in his own right. Just names all over the place. We can go down the list. I think they have the edge in offense. I think they have the edge in defense. This isn't, like you said, the Tom Brady that we're accustomed to. That's the cerebral assassin he is now. My guy was a baby back then. He was a game manager, and I don't think he was quite ready for the problems that the 89 49ers were bringing with Montana in the game. I don't see it.
So you're going with the 49ers?
Got to go with the 49ers. Ronnie Lott in that game. Got to.
I hate y'all. Every time there's a Patriot team, y'all put it on me to decide what it is. You know how I feel about that.
That's right.
I'm looking at the I'm looking at the 89 49ers, their box scores, and they lost to the Rams. I think Eric Dickerson was still on that Rams team in 89. They lost to them, and I'm looking to see.
But they also beat them 30-3 in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, in the rematch. That's what. Yeah, they met them in the NFC Championship game and beat the brakes off of them 30-3. Beat the Vikings in the divisional round 41-13, and then good lord, they defeated the Broncos in the Super Bowl 55-10. Meanwhile, see, here's the thing, that Patriots team, yes, they're 14-2. They beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl, but even then. The team that they beat in the Super Bowl, those Eagles, Donovan McNabb was at the peak of his quarterback powers. You had Terrell Owens, who had missed like 7 or 8 weeks with like a broken leg or something, if I remember correctly.
Broke his leg.
Yeah,
he
Super
broke
Bowl
his
game.
leg
And came back.
Didn't score a touchdown in the game, but ran up almost 200 yards of receiving yards against that Patriots defense. They didn't let him score. And if I'm not mistaken, that Eagles team, can any of you name another wide receiver on that Philly Eagles team without looking at it? Because I'm sitting here trying to think of who else was on that team. I remember there was one dude that I can't even remember his name, but he would walk around with like a world heavyweight championship belt, but like it would look weird because he wasn't like a top tier wide receiver. It was Freddie something. But he would walk around with a, you know what I'm talking about? He would walk around with a belt over his shoulder like he was like the Intercontinental Champion. And we always look at him like, we're like, who are you? Who are you? You're like the third wide receiver on this team. And like you're walking around with this.
I think it wasn't like Brian Selleck, the tight end. I think that's like all I remember.
Yeah, I think.
Was it Selleck?
Was Westbrook
a little bit
still
later.
the running back?
Yeah, Westbrook was the running back.
He was the running back. I'm just thinking back to 2004. I want to say the NFC East was.
I want to say maybe his name was Freddie Mitchell. Maybe is what I want to say.
That sounds right, Freddie Mitchell.
Could
that
be.
sounds right.
Could
yeah,
be.
That's what I want to say.
But my point being that offensive core, yeah, you got Bryant Westbrook coming out of the backfield, so kind of like a Roger Craig light, I guess you could say, for McNabb. But with the wide receiving core going up against this 49er defense, like. Are they going to be able to get off at all on this 49er defense? I mean, with everybody, the headhunters running around back there, like I feel like that Freddie dude, one time across the middle, Ronnie Lott just lay him out, and he's going to forget about that belt. He's going to forget his address. He's going to forget.
Yeah, but that's the Eagles, though. That's the Eagles team.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, well, that's true. But like against this team, I don't see that happening. On the other side, like the 49ers offense is just way more powerful than anything that Patriots team had to come across in 2004. They didn't see any quarterback like Joe Montana in 2004, not remotely close to Joe Montana. And he's just got firepower like all over. Like everywhere. I don't know if, and they're the 1 seed, so they're playing in Candlestick. So to me,
and Mike Coffer is the kicker of that group too, led the league in points.
Who wasn't bad. So, like, for me, it's like, Rod said coaching was his deciding factor on his side, and he went with Belichick. I don't
Yeah,
think that the game would be close enough
same.
for Vinatieri to come into play. I think that the 49ers would be up on him. I think the 49ers would jump out on the Patriots early and stay far enough ahead of them. I think the Patriots might try to rally at the end, a little dink and
Definitely
dunk type action with Brady, but I think the 49ers would just be up by too much. I'm looking at like a
agreed.
34 to 24 type game. Like the Patriots would get a couple touchdowns, but I don't see them stopping the 49ers from scoring 4 or 5
No,
touchdowns with John Taylor, Jerry Rice, Roger Craig, Joe Montana. Uh, I don't even remember. Was Wesley Walls the tight end in the 49ers in '89?
No, it
Didn't he
should have
come
been
from San
Jones.
Francisco?
Should have been Brent
Was it
Jones.
Brent Jones in '89? I didn't know if he was there yet. So Brent
Yeah,
Jones
yeah.
at tight end. I mean, the line was nasty on both sides.
they had both of them that year. They had
They
Wesley
both.
and
So
Brent.
so Wesley Walls was on that team, but
Yeah, they had
I think
both.
what happened. Yeah, and then a couple years later in the expansion draft, when the Panthers and the Jaguars came along, the 49ers cut Walls, and that's
That's
when
how the
he ended
Panthers
up
got
with
him.
Carolina. But he was basically at his peak. He wasn't getting any snaps behind Jones, if I'm not mistaken. So that's why they cut him. But I'm going to go with the 49ers. Not because I hate the Patriots, I do. But, I mean, I've been pretty uh, lenient towards them in terms of all of this. If we imply the Aaron Gabriel rule that he put in like a month and a half ago, that if it's a Patriots team that was caught cheating in that particular year, we have to add that to the equation that they were using cameras and stuff. If they're the higher seed, that was the Aaron Gabriel rule that we established. If the Patriots are the higher seed, they have all their devices available to them: cameras, scouts, people in trench coats, whatever was going on. And '04, and '04 was the year they really were doing it. The Eagles were all complaining after the fact that the Patriots actually videotaped their practices going into that Super Bowl, and the Panthers had, said the same thing the year before. So this was right before Spygate blew open, but this year was the year that Spygate was focused on, was the '04 Patriots team against those Eagles. So you take that away, you can't spy on Joe Montana, you can't spy on Jerry Rice, what they're doing, this West Coast offense.
And you
And I
still
think
got Bill Romanowski coming at you, Charles Haley,
crazy
these
ass
guys.
running around trying to kill people. Yeah, I mean, steroid out. So I'm gonna go with the 49ers on this. One of our strongest one seeds. Actually, honestly, they probably were the number 2 overall one seed going into this behind those 85 Bears. So I'm gonna pick the Niners to move on to the next round. So goodbye to the '04 Patriots. They were a 4 seed. They were the lowest team left in this, and they made it all the way to the Final Four. So, but Joe Montana and the boys move on to the championship round here in just a bit. This one I don't know what to do with. The other Final Four matchup here pits a 1 seed, the 1992 Dallas Cowboys, taking on another San Francisco 49er team who a lot of 49er fans consider the greatest in their franchise, the '84 49ers that went 15-1. No John Taylor, no Jerry Rice. Roger Craig is on this team, a young Roger Craig, and a young Joe Montana who already had a ring underneath his belt going into '84. They won in '81. So Bill Walsh is the coach of this team, not George Seifert. So that's a huge difference. Taking on a Dallas Cowboys squad that, although they went, I didn't put the record up there, but they went 13-3 in the season. They lost the first 2 games of the season because Emmitt Smith was holding out for a new contract. When he came back, they went 13-1 the rest of the way in the regular season, and then just beat the brakes off everybody in the playoffs. So it was clear that they were the best team in the NFL that year, even over the '92 49ers who were chasing them. And that was growing up in the '90s, man. Dallas versus San Francisco was the rivalry
It was.
to watch.
It was.
You know, Troy Aikman on one side, you got Joe Montana or Steve Young on the other side. You got stars all over the place, and they would always play around the middle of the year. And it felt like it always decided home field advantage at the end of the year, whoever won that game. Although, if I'm not mistaken, this '92 Cowboys team, or it might have been the next year, one of those 2 years, the Cowboys had to go into Candlestick in the NFC Championship game and win
Yeah,
to
and they
get to
beat
the
them.
Super Bowl. Yeah, and
Yeah,
they beat them. And I
I
can't remember
think
if it
it
was
was
the
this year.
'92 or the '93.
I think it was
It
92.
might have been '92.
It was
Because I
92.
think '93 they had home field, and San Francisco had to come there, and they lost to Dallas. And then the next year, '94, Dallas had to go back to San Francisco. But in '94, the '94 49ers were legit. They had Deion Sanders and all those guys. They weren't going to really be denied that year. And it was the first year with Jimmy Johnson gone. So there's your background for everything. Brandon, I'm going to let you
So,
go first here. '92 Dallas Cowboys are the 1 seed, so they have home field advantage. You're playing in Cowboys Stadium, and you're playing under the rules of 1992, which might limit the defensive rules that the 49ers can play against that Cowboy team. Having said that, the Cowboys don't have Joe Montana. So which way are you going to roll here between the 92 Dallas Cowboys and the 84 San Francisco 49ers?
Man, this one was really tough because I think these two teams are built similar and make sense because they were competing with each other so much and during this time period. But I think Joe Montana's going to be playing for playing for a chance at a championship. Another Joe Montana led team. I think the difference here, man, is we mentioned Roger Craig, deservingly so, but Wendell Tyler also ran for 1262 that year. I think him plus Montana, who was young but still went 3,200 yards, 28 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, still wasn't turning the ball over. And basically his entire offensive line, 3 out of 5 were Pro Bowlers that year. Excellent offensive line. Up there with the Cowboys line, who arguably is probably one of the greatest of all times as well. So 2 power running teams, but you also have Roger Craig, who's a receiving back. So you got 2 backs that really can change the pace. You got a power back and a guy that can really get downhill, Wendell Tyler. And then you got Roger Craig, who can catch the ball out of the backfield. Joe Montana's moving the ball around. Tough defense, still a lot of those same names from 89, just a bit younger. So I think the 49ers take it. I think they were the more dominant team. And I know we're playing in the 1992 era, but I'm not really sure that that's a disadvantage for the 49ers, to be honest with you. Just from a talent standpoint, I think they take it. And Bill Walsh, 6th year, the maestro, defending world champions that year. I think that swagger's just carrying them in, man. Heart of a champion coming through.
Can't be mad at that. I mean, 84 49ers just barely missed being a 1 seed. Them and the 91 Redskins were highly considered to be 1 seeds in this bracket when we first put it together. So it doesn't surprise me that Brandon would move them forward. Rod, what you got between the 92 Dallas Cowboys and the 84 San Francisco 49ers? The Cowboys are the higher seed, so we're playing in Cowboys Stadium.
Well, I agree with Brandon as far as these two teams are absolutely built to mirror one another. They look exactly like one another. You have 2 Pro Bowl quarterbacks going at it. You got 2 Hall of Fame coaches going at it. I mean, this is a game for the ages. I think the difference to me comes down to, the 49ers, they won. And the reason that they won is because this is the first year they came out with that whole West Coast offense deal. No one had seen that West Coast offense before, so they could run it. Joe Montana was really learning it this year because, this is new to Joe Montana as well. The difference was Joe Montana got to practice every day in this West Coast offense, whereas the teams that he were going against this year may not have seen this West Coast offense before. However, when you talk about the Cowboys, because it is the 1992 Cowboys, that means that the 1992 Cowboys have seen this same West Coast offense for the last 8 years. So they know what it is playing this West Coast offense. And the problem is this is Joe Montana's first year of playing this West Coast offense because this is the 1984 San Francisco 49ers, who's never played in the West Coast offense, going against the 1992 Cowboys, who's seen the offense for the last 8 years. Now, you talk about the defense. I'm going to tell you what. I ain't even going to talk about the Cowboys offense because we know what the offense was. But the defense, Tony Tolbert, Tony Casillas, Russell Maryland, Charles Haley is on this defense. Vincent Smith, Robert Jones, Ken Norton Jr., Isaac Holt, and don't forget about hard-hitting Darren Woodson is on this defense. This was a heck of a defense. And these guys could cover. They could do anything they needed to do. Now let's go to the other side of the ball. Let's go with the weakest link at the receivers. Tight end, Jay Novacek, and we know he's a Hall of Famer. Michael Irvin, Hall of Famer. Alvin Harper, Darrell Moose Johnson, who'd come out. He could catch the ball coming out of the backfield, and he'd also be a lead blocker for Emmitt Smith. And then Troy Aikman was the man. He could put the ball anywhere. And one of the things that Troy Aikman did with his head coach is they practiced situational football. What that means is we practice situations. We know what our offense is. We know our offensive line, who is led by Big Nate Newton, Mark Stepnowski, John Grisick, Eric Williams. We know what we got on the offensive line. So we know how they're going to block. We know how they're going to push our guys, at least the defensive line that they face, at least 5 yards forward. So first and whatever, it's going to be second and 5 minimal. So what they did, Troy Aikman and Jimmy Johnson, we practice situational football. That means when we're in this situation, that situation that doesn't happen often in a game, but we prepare and practice for it all the time in practice. That is how the Cowboys won a lot of games that year, due to practicing situational football. And I'm not even going to get into the coaching part. I'm just going to have you look at it. Hey, Cowboys have faced the West Coast offense for the last 8 years, and they're going against Joe Montana's first year of playing in the West Coast offense. Maybe Joe Montana beats them in another 4 or 5 years, but not this year. The 1984 49ers lose to the Cowboys because of the familiarity of that offense, and they go down by a score of 31-18.
Okay, so it's on me again.
18.
I didn't speak through that in at the very end too.
No, I mean, Ronnie Lott, Eric Wright, these guys covering. He better have them balls perfect. All four of them guys were Pro Bowlers in the defensive backfield.
So here's my thing, and for me, looking at this game, I was like, okay, I'm gonna take away like the skill players on both sides and the coaches and all that stuff. And to me, this game would be decided in the trenches, offense and defensive line. With the 85 Bears, who we keep mentioning them for a reason, because whenever, even to this day, whenever there's a defense that's just doing their thing, like on a record-setting type level, the 85 Bears come up in terms of, well, they're not the 85 Bears, or are they
Exactly
the 85 Bears? You know what I mean? Like, it keeps coming up like that as like a measuring stick. I bring them up because the Cowboys' offensive line in 1992 is used as a measuring stick today for offensive lines in terms of like if like the offensive line is just like blowing people off the blocks, people go, Great Wall of Dallas. That's the 92, 93 offensive line. And I watched that. It was a Football Life episode that's been on. It's been out years now, but it's called The Great Wall of Dallas, and it's about that offensive line. And for some reason, as a kid growing up, I just assumed that they were spending a lot of high draft picks on these guys and replenishing it. No, these dudes, like if you watch that documentary, these dudes were all late round, undrafted guys, just big, mean.
But they were big and nasty.
Mark Stefanowski and Nate Newton, Eric Williams, Tony Casillas. I mean, these
guys were nasty, man.
There was something about when they got to get Mark Tourney, because Mark Tourney was there before Jimmy Johnson. He was there before '89, so he was a carryover from the previous regime that had bottomed out. And just, I'm trying to picture the '92 Cowboys offensive line leaning on the '84 49ers defensive front. Because really, when you go back and look at a lot of reasons why Emmitt Smith gets overlooked in terms of yes, he has more yards than any other running back in history, but no one ever calls him the best running back in history. They always say it's Walter Payton or you know what I mean, or Barry Sanders, or Bo Jackson, even O.J. Simpson or Bo Jackson, whoever. But all those guys had to make plays themselves. Whenever you watch a replay of Emmitt's just running through a hole. He's just running through this big, huge ass hole that the line opened up, and literally he just has his head down and he just is hitting that hole and going. Sometimes you couldn't find Emmitt because he would hide behind the line wait for the hole to open up, and it might not even be the hole that they called for the play. He would just wait, and then it would open up, and boop, he'd go right through it, 8 yards, and like all of a sudden Troy's got a 2nd and 2. Now I'm looking at Troy's stats. I'm like, Troy only threw for 3,400 yards, this, that, and the other, but. Yeah, it was a different era back then. Like
you ran the ball,
throwing 4,000 yards. You ran the ball. You wanted a 1,500-yard rusher on your squad, and if you had one, you were going to be a good team. The Cowboys had that, and then they had Troy, who, like I said, if you look at his stats and try to compare him to like today, they almost seem pedestrian. But back then, he was the perfect orchestrator for this offense in terms of just hand the ball to Emmitt and get the hell out the way. Or if we need a 3rd and 5, the playmaker's over here on the left, Alvin Harper's over here on the right, Jay Novacek's going to hit the seam, and I'm going to hit whoever's open. And that was really hard to defend. This team won their Super Bowl against the Bills like 52-17, I think it was, that I was looking at a second ago. Just dominance once they got that train rolling with Emmett. So really, to me, it came down to, would the San Francisco defensive front be able to get past the Dallas Cowboy offensive line to get to Troy Aikman? And I don't think they could. I don't think that I think they were too small compared to having to get past this Cowboy line in '84. Because in '84 is a little different than they were almost a decade later. I mean, these dudes are like 300 plus. Eric Williams is a dude I wouldn't want to run across in an Arby's parking lot. Like, he just was just a mean dude. Same for Nate Newton. Hell, Nate Newton got on drug trafficking charges after his career was over. If I'm not mistaken, he had like pounds of marijuana in a truck bed or something. So that dude was on this line. I mean, they were just bad. And then they kept replenishing down the road. You get Larry Allen, who was an upgrade, down the road because Eric Williams got injured. He came back. They got Larry Allen in it. So that carried out to 95. I'm going to go with Dallas because that offensive line and that running game with Emmett, the 49ers wouldn't have seen anything like this. On the other side, I think the Cowboys could have, like to Rod's point, I think they could have contained the 49ers offense because they've seen it. They've played against it for the past couple of years, and they would have kind of known what to expect. Plus, this 40 didn't have the guy everybody fears on the outside, John Taylor, Jerry Rice. Those guys, they're not even there yet. They haven't been drafted yet. I know they got Freddie Solomon and whoever else they had at wide receiver, but those names don't scare me.
Dwight Clark and those guys.
Dwight Clark, those guys don't scare me. To me, I say Dwight Clark, I think slow for some reason, like compared to who would be guarding. I mean, it'd be like Darren Woodson or somebody out of the backfield guarding Dwight Clark, basically, right? I mean, you probably have a safety drop down to cover him. It'd probably be Darren Woodson. So Darren Woodson versus Dwight Clark, I'm going to pick Darren Woodson in that matchup. He's going to be faster, better hands. I can't see this 49er team, as good as they were, getting past this Cowboys team with their run game and as good as they were offensively. If Emmett hadn't held out, this team probably goes 15-1, to be honest.
Maybe.
Those first two games they lost, they basically lost because they didn't have Emmett. It made Jerry get off the couch and go, okay, I got to pay this dude some money. I thought I could stall him out, and he proved me wrong. It's one of the few times Jerry got proved wrong and had to go pay a guy.
That's right. And the team was much more together then. When Emmitt Smith got his money, a lot of the Dallas Cowboys line was saying, pay the man, give him his money. Yeah. So it was almost they weren't really into those first two games that they lost because they were like, yo, dude, where you trying to mess this up? Pay the man his money. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it was like they weren't even into it.
What would have happened if Dallas had won those first two games in '92? I mean, would Emmett have crawled back hat in hand, or do you think Emmett would have even done that? Would Emmett have been willing to sit out the whole season? Because I think, if I remember correctly, I think he was ready to sit out the whole season, or he had to report by week 6 or week 7 or something like that.
Yeah, there was a deadline that he had to. Yeah, there was a deadline that he had to report by. However, I just believe that the team was like that together. But you know how Jerry Jones is. If you hold out and we're winning, he's not gonna pay you. He's not gonna pay you. You know what I mean? So that's why I felt like the team was all in it together for Emmett to get his money. So they didn't play like anything. And as soon as he came back, come on. I mean, because I could have ran behind that offensive line.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, I could have got 1,200 yards behind the Great Wall of Dallas. I mean, easy. But but then like I look at today, Dallas paid everybody except for Dak Prescott. And you got to ask, if you know the history of Dallas and Jerry Jones, it's like, okay, why? Why didn't they pay Dak? And it wasn't so much they were just slightly off here. To me, it's like, okay, they don't believe in Dak to that point. They believe in Zeke. They believe in Amari Cooper. They believe in all these other guys they've given money to. What's the defensive lineman name that got like $100 million contract?
Lawrence.
DeMarcus Lawrence.
He got his money. Everybody's getting paid except for the quarterback. So it's like, to me, every time I hear Dallas and Dak come up, I think back to '92 and Emmett holding out and then getting his money once they realized that they needed him. Dak's not the type of guy to do that. Emmett was at a point where he was coming off of 91. He'd established himself as a top 3 running back in the league. The line had established himself. Everyone was kind of looking at Dallas in '92 like, that's the squad that's going to do it. And I didn't even mention this. Look at the NFC East in 1992. The teams that were in that division that they had to go against, and they went 13-3.
The Skins had just won the Super Bowl.
They're the defending Super Bowl champions in '91. They could have been crowned one of the greatest teams themselves. And then you got The Giants are in there. You've got
Johnson won the Super Bowl not long ago. Yeah.
They won it in
Then
1990.
The Eagles with Buddy Ryan's
Eagles,
defense.
They probably had the best defense in the whole division, and they were 4th. I mean, you got a young Reggie White and like Jerome Brown and them dudes coming at you in the front. Like, they destroyed the Cowboys in the playoff game the year before. So it's like you put all that together to me, and I'm like, okay, division, run game, offensive line, Hall of Famer at quarterback, Hall of Famer at wide receiver. Great picks all on the defense. I'm going with Dallas in this one. So Dallas,
and the NFC East
Dallas
was the hardest. It was the hardest division back then. People talked about the NFC East being the hardest division for years during that time period because you had all the Super Bowl winners coming out of that division.
Yep, and we talked about this the previous round where it was like from 80, I think it was the 49ers, from 84, these 84 49ers all the way to like 97, the NFC won the Super Bowl like every year. Because I was like, that can't be right. I started running through the winners. I was like, dang, it is right. Because 84 the 49ers won, 85 the Bears, 86 the Giants, 87 the Redskins, 88 and 89 49ers, 90 Giants again, 91 Skins again. 92,
that's it. That's the
Cowboys,
NFC East is all over the place.
49ers again. It was just like, so it was crazy to me that happened, but it is what it is. So we have a final. I can't type it in because I ran out of USB ports, but we're going to do the championship game. I couldn't type it in because I didn't know who was going to be what. So I just have this banner is going to run underneath this. It's they're both 1 seeds, so it doesn't really matter. And it's one's at 89, one's 92, so I think the rules are relatively the same. Neutral spot, championship game, 1989 San Francisco 49ers versus 1992 Dallas Cowboys. This is a game I would have paid a lot of money to go see in person. Like, this is one of those games where you're like, okay, you got stars like on both sides here. Like, these are probably the 2 peak teams for these franchises in their history, the 89 49ers, the 92 Cowboys, in terms of popularity, in terms of Pro Bowlers, in terms of just people knowing who they are. Like, and just think back to the America's Game of the Week at 4:00 that gets broadcasted to pretty much ocean. Both these teams in those respected years were pretty much that 4:00 game. It was going to be in 89 the 49ers versus somebody. In 92 it was going to be the Cowboys versus somebody at 4:00 or on primetime pretty much every week because everyone just kind of knew that those 2 teams were the best 2 teams in those years. One of y'all want to go first on this one? Because I don't know what I want to hear y'all go through this before I have to make a decision here.
One thing about this game that's coming up, there's only one person that benefits from this game. You know who that is? That's Charles Haley. He's on both teams. Charles Haley's on both
teams. Yeah.
He's going to benefit. He's the only one who benefits on this game.
And I hope, like I said, I think I said last week, Eric Davis, who was actually I think he was on the 89 and the 84 49ers, had reached out and was like, how are the Vikings still in this, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, he should be happy because 2 49er teams that he was on made the Final Four, and probably the best one he was on is in the championship game. Brandon, I'm going to let you go first. I'm going to go ahead and choose this and let you go first on this one because I don't know what to do here, and I'm curious to hear both of y'all's
opinions. I got to go with my guys,
Brandon, you got
man.
The floor.
I got to stick with the Bay, man. I think that this was probably my favorite team left out of that Final Four, and that's the 89 49ers. We mentioned it. I've mentioned it before when we went back and forth about the 84 and 89 team. I always think that this team better, more talented, more names. But aside from the obvious, Jerry Rice tearing things up, John Taylor, you also had Tom Rathman, the fullback, who got off for 305 yards and caught 73 passes for 616 yards out the backfield. Also have Steve Young as the backup who threw for 8 touchdowns in relief. Ronnie Lott, Don Griffin, Michael Walter leading the defense. I mean, these guys were just smoking teams throughout the entire season. They got the NFL's most valuable player and the NFL Offensive Player Awards. Joe Montana did his thing, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. on the way to the Super Bowl run. 8 interceptions. My man was not turning the ball over. I just think this group is a well-oiled machine. There's not really a weakness. They have.
Oh, then we lost. I think Brandon might have got a phone call there.
Yeah, I think what happened is, the powers that be realized that he was wrong on his pick. So with Brandon being wrong on his pick, divine intervention said, "Hey, Brandon, you need to get on up out of here."
It's coming back.
I don't know.
There you get a call.
We think it was divine intervention there, Brandon. We think it was divine intervention, man.
But no, so you were about to say your pick. You were on your roll. You were on a roll.
He picked the 49ers. Yeah.
I got to stick with the guys in the Bay, man. And they have this West Coast offense pretty much perfected at this point. So, yes, I understand you've seen it, but I also understand that you still got to stop it. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the 49ers, man. Kicking game is there as well. I got to go with them guys, man.
Rod, championship game, man. We've gone over 2 months with this, down to the final 2 squads. 1989 San Francisco 49ers, 1992 Dallas Cowboys. Anybody that watches the rundown knows the biggest Dallas Cowboy fan out there is Rod Funderburk. So I'm very curious to see what happens here. Although I think I might know. Rod, who you got between the 92 Cowboys?
I mean, I got to be honest with you. I understand where Brandon is coming from. I really do. But, I just went down it, man. And let's look at Joe Montana and Troy Aikman. To me, they both cross each other out. Joe Montana threw for 3,500 yards that year, okay? Well, guess what? Troy Aikman threw for 3,445 yards. I mean, 50-yard difference? Quarterbacks cross themselves out. Emmitt Smith, he rushed for 1,700 yards that year. Roger Craig, he rushed for 1,054 yards. So Emmitt has him just a little bit, and of course that's attributed to the offensive line. Then we talking about Tom Rathman. Tom Rathman was a heck of a blocker. He had 305 yards rushing.
He can catch the ball.
He can catch the ball.
He caught 79 balls as a fullback.
These guys had depth. You can't punish them for that.
I'm not punishing at all. That's why I'm telling you, as we going through it, everyone is being canceled out. Isn't that what I just said? I mean, Darryl Johnston, the Moose. Hey, the Moose Johnson, he's a fullback. Guess what? He had almost 300 yards catching. And then, of course, he only rushed for 61 yards, but he was the blocker. He was the lead blocker. Then you got, Alvin Harper. And then, Alvin Harper only had 565 odd yards. Michael Irvin, he only had 1,300 yards. So you have to give the wide receivers of San Francisco the edge because Jerry Rice had 1,400 yards, which is a little bit closer to Michael Irvin. And John Taylor, he had about 400 more yards more than Alvin Harper. So then, you go to the tight ends. Brent Jones, Brent Jones for the 49ers, he had 500 yards. And then you go over to Jay Novacek. He had 630 yards. I mean, Jay Novacek, small edge, but really they cancel each other out. Now you go to the offensive line. San Francisco, they had a pretty good offensive line. They had a really good offensive line, but they were more of a pass blocking, pass probe offensive line. Mark Tuinei, Nate Newton, Mark Stepnoski, John Giesick, Eric Williams. These guys were big, nasty. They ran the ball, but they could also pass probe too. Again, goes back to the quarterbacks. Yards are pretty much identical. So the lines are pretty much identical. I will give a slight edge to the Cowboys just because they were just a bigger line. And like Dez said, they were that measuring stick when it comes to the offensive line. Name-wise on the defense, I mean, everybody knows Tony Tolbert. Everybody knows Tony Casillas, Russell Maryland, Charles Haley. Of course, Charles Haley was on both sides of the ball. Ken Norton Jr. at the linebacker. Isaac Hope, at the corner. Darren Woodson at the corner. With the San Francisco 49ers, you've got Ronnie Lott at the corner or at the safety. Then you got Darryl Pollard at the linebacker. You got Keena Turner at middle linebacker. Charles Haley up front. Kevin Fagan up front. Pierce Holt up front. Michael Carter up
Romanowski
front.
on that team.
Yeah, I
Don
mean,
Griffin.
Romanowski's coming off the bench on that team. So it's not bad. But I was just looking at the starters. So again,
Don Griffin back there.
the defense and everything is even. I mean, it's completely even to me. So I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm going back to coaching. You know, you've got the offensive coordinator for the 49ers. It's Mike Holmgren, I believe it was at this time. Bill McPherson was a
Oh yeah.
defensive coordinator. George Seifert, he's the head coach during this time. Then you look over at the Cowboys. Of course, you've got Jimmy Johnson, who put the whole team together as a head coach as well as a player personnel. You got Norv Turner, who was the offensive coordinator, who would even help Cam Newton trying to get back on track. We remember Dave Wanstead. Everybody knows Dave Wanstead as a defensive coordinator. You had Dave Campo at the assistant. You had Butch Davis as a defensive back coach. I mean, to me, it's going to come back down really to whoever puts together the best game plan. And the only thing that I can do is say and hope that I believe it will be the Cowboys who put the better game plan together. Just because Jimmy Johnson did what he did in Miami. Jimmy Johnson came to the Cowboys, got rid of Herschel Walker. Everybody called him a fool, didn't see his vision and where he was going and what he was going to do. Jimmy Johnson is the man. Once Jimmy Johnson left, Cowboys went straight downhill. So to me, it's about the game plan, the person who you put in that driver's seat. In this particular situation, Jimmy Johnson's coming correct. When he made it to the big dance, he didn't lose the big dance. Didn't matter if it was on the collegiate level or the NFL level. Therefore, my vote is going to the Cowboys, but it will be a close game. I think the game comes down to a 27-24 win. It's going to be a game of the history. The Cowboys will win it. But hey, it's not my decision to make. Everything rests on the shoulders of Desmond Johnson.
God, I hate y'all. Y'all did this to me. All three matchups, y'all did this to me. And I was like, maybe this is the one where they're going to both pick the same one. I was like, nah, they ain't going to pick the same team on this one. Man, I've said throughout this tournament the 89 49ers are one of the teams I've hated my entire life because of how good they were. And I reserve that for certain teams in my lifetime where it's like, man, I hate them. It's like you hate them, but you respect them. It's like a hateful respect. Like 92 Duke comes to mind. Those 04 Patriots come to mind. This 89 49ers team definitely comes to mind in terms of just, I didn't like the 49ers. I didn't like how good they were. I didn't like how much shine they were getting. And then I didn't like the fact that they'd go out and just beat the break off people every Sunday. And like, it was one of those weird years where 89, I didn't really have a team. I was still kind of a Redskin fan at that point. I became a Cowboys fan early 90s when they drafted Emmett and had Troy. And I was a Miami fan, so I followed Jimmy Johnson basically to Dallas and left the Redskins, who had just won a Super Bowl in 91 and started rooting for Cowboys early 90s. And until 95 when I got the Panthers and left all of them and have been a Panther fan ever since. But there was a stretch where I felt like I was bouncing around NFC East teams in terms of who to like. And in this area, this was Redskin country. So I kind of grew up a Redskin fan in the beginning. And then as you got older, you found your own team. That 49ers team was just super annoying, but I look at their offense, and it might be one of the most perfect offenses ever created. Like, if you look at what they had at skill position-wise, in terms of you got Joe Montana at quarterback, who's considered, at this point, second best quarterback ever behind Tom Brady, I guess. But for the longest, he was considered the measuring stick for quarterback. He's under center. You got Jerry Rice at wide receiver, who many consider the greatest football player of all time. Not just wide receiver, but number one football player at wide receiver. You got John Taylor on the other side, who would be the best number two of all time. Maybe you go to Pittsburgh in the 70s with Lynn Swann and John Stallworth. John Stallworth being the two. Maybe he'd be in that level, but I almost look at John Taylor as like Scottie Pippen in terms of like a number two wide receiver. Like, that's kind of what you want in that John Taylor mold today. You want your number two wide receiver to be like that almost. So Bruce Jones at tight end. We already talked about Wesley Walls was behind him on the bench and barely could even get in the game.
Steve Young barely got snaps.
Steve Young is on this team. He's the backup quarterback. I mean, he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. So it's like, I'm looking at all that. And then, we just talked about Dallas and their offensive line. They got Hall of Famers up and down on the offense too. Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith, I'm pretty sure is Jay Novacek in the Hall of Fame? I can't remember if he's made it
Yeah,
in yet
yeah,
or
yeah.
not.
Novacek,
So
yeah,
Jay
Novacek made
Novacek's
it.
in there. I mean,
And that division was
I
just the
don't can't.
best
I think
division in
Moose got in
football.
too in that division
Yeah,
because in
Moose got in.
'89 the NFC West in '89 it was basically the Cowboys. I mean, it was the 49ers, the Saints, the Falcons, and I think like the Cardinals were in
Yeah,
the
I mean that's
NFC
an easy
West.
division.
And
They
those
were winning
teams
that
aren't.
division every
Yeah,
year.
I mean, but they
the Saints
stomping
only had
everybody,
like
not just the NFC.
they
West.
just went through. Yeah, that's true. And the Saints
They
back
did.
then they had only had like 3 winning seasons ever. The Falcons had never won back-to-back winning seasons. The Cardinals were the Cardinals. So I mean, ugh, like in terms of what they had to go. That's like the Patriots where you just get 5-6 wins right off bat because of the division you're in.
Mm-hmm.
You got to play these other guys. They played Dallas. Dallas '89 went 1-15. So I mean, that was the end of Tom Landry right there. Looking back on who was good in '89, the Bengals are who the 49ers played in the Super Bowl, and I do remember those Bengals, Boone Dyson, Icky Woods, the Icky Shuffle, that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember all that. Like I mean, Cincinnati kind of caught a little wave and made it all the way there. And if I'm not mistaken, they were leading that Super Bowl at the end. It took Joe Montana driving them down the field in a 2-minute drill in the fourth and hitting John Taylor for a touchdown in the last seconds of that game for those 49ers to win the Super Bowl. Meanwhile, these Cowboys stomped a mud hole in the Bills, I think it was, 52-17. In the Super
The
Bowl.
Bills and everybody they played.
And then went back and did it again the next year to those Bills. So, I mean, I don't know. I almost want to flip a coin here, which would be disingenuous.
They
to all
both
the
beat up on the
viewers that
Bills.
watch this for $2. Yeah, they both beat up on the Bills. So it's like,
Poor Bills.
I got to figure out an X factor. Coaching wise, you got Bill Walsh versus Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson's expertise is defense. Bill Walsh's expertise is offense. Man, I will say this at this point though. Bill Walsh has 2 Super Bowl rings, and Jimmy Johnson would have 1, counting '92, but '81.
But he would have.
Bill
But
Walsh
he
has
would
already
have a
won 2.
couple. But he would have a couple national championship rings.
I mean, that's cool and all.
True.
Jimmy Johnson doesn't
But,
lose,
yeah, I
baby,
don't know
when he
if
go
that's
to the
gonna
big dance.
I don't know if that
Jimmy
really.
Johnson
I don't know
doesn't
if that
lose
really.
in the big dance, baby.
I don't think that really factors.
I don't know if that
How,
really.
how many
applies
coaches?
in this,
How many
but-
coaches have been able to transfer collegiate national championships into NFL Super Bowls? I
Pete
can't
Carroll
name many.
started.
That's
I
a
can't
good
name
question.
many coaches
That's a good
who've
question.
done that.
That's
Usually
a great
they
question, 'cause
bust.
I don't know.
I know
I
the
mean,
numbers are
even the
similar.
greatest coach that we consider of all time on a collegiate level couldn't do it, and that's your boy down in Alabama. What's his name? I can't
Nick
even think
Saban.
his name. Nick Saban.
Nick Saban.
He went to the Dolphins and he got
Well, he
up out of
went,
there
what,
He
real
went to the
quick.
Dolphins.
Dolphins, though.
Yeah,
Well,
but
hell,
Jimmy
when
Johnson went to the
Alabama came around,
Cowboys
it
when
was
they
like,
were
yo,
1 and
man, why don't you come up
15.
Jimmy
That's true,
Johnson
too.
knew how to recruit
I
Florida.
can't. Yeah, that's really what it was. What he took the whole the U. Watch the 30 for 30 in the U. Explains all of it.
Yeah.
Howard Schnellenberger
Oh, yeah, I've seen
and how they
both
roped
parts
off
of it.
Florida
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
it's
all
great.
that good stuff. Yeah, so I mean,
It's great.
and I love it because that seems like that's what Mac Brown's doing right now
Exactly.
with North Carolina.
Yeah.
He's roping off the state and trying to get all the best guys to come here, and then that attracts other guys. But having said that, it's like my heart wants to say the Cowboys, but my head is saying 49ers. Like, if I really, really had to sit down and decide who would win this game based off the way these teams played, if the 49ers stopped the run game of the Cowboys, which is a tall
Still.
order in itself, but you limit Emmett to under 100 yards, the Cowboys are going to lose that game against this 49er team
Absolutely.
because this 49er team is going to score 30 getting out
They're
of
gonna
bed,
light it
like,
up.
no matter what.
Yeah, but the
gonna light it
49ers
up,
aren't
so-
going to stop. The 49ers line ain't going to stop them. Listen, if you guys have ever played football, that's the whole reason that the
But
run game was so big. It's about controlling
the
that line
49ers
of
defensive
scrimmage.
line?
That line,
Yeah, the 49ers defensive
49ers
line would
defensive line
not
was
have been
nasty,
able
man.
to stop the offensive line. I mean, then when you get later on in the court, you guys know how it goes. When the run game is going, once it gets third and fourth quarter, that defense
Yes.
is exhausted. And then that's when the points really
but
escalate
these guys
up.
had depth though. I
They
feel like
had
you gotta
some
take
depth.
that
I'm
depth
looking at their-
in the
so they had-
situation.
Pierce Holt, Michael Carter, Kevin Fagan, Charles. Well, they ran a 3-4. Charles Haley, Matt Millen, Mike
and
Walter,
and
Keena
we have
Turner.
learned We
their front
learned this
seven.
year from the Panthers that
You
3-4
got Derek
defense
Wright
has
back
holes
there,
in
Ronnie
it.
Lott.
That 3-4
Well,
defense will allow running to take place. Trust me, it will.
if people aren't in the right spots, or if people aren't trained to run a 3-4, the guys the Panthers
Exactly.
were putting in a 3-4 last year were not 3-4 guys. They were sticking them in there hoping for the best, and then 200 yards rushing later by the other team. Like, we might have made a mistake. We probably should stay in the 4-3. But this 49er team, they were like 5th in defense, I believe, that year with a 3-4, and it's still early enough where I can't apply the way NFL is today to what it was back then, because back then a 3-4 defense could shut you down running the ball because they're putting 7 dudes up in the box immediately, and then if you stick a safety in there too, Emmett's got to run through 8 guys. I mean, and we already established that Emmett's not the shifty Barry Sanders spin move, have to do everything type.
Not
runner.
at all.
He's waiting for a hole. He's waiting for a hole, and if the hole ain't there, and there was times where this offensive line, depending on who they were facing, usually it was a 49er team, now that I think about it, where this offensive line wasn't just impenetrable. Like, there was guys that get back there. This 49er team also had over 20 sacks, if I'm not mistaken, on the season too, on that defensive front. And it looks like they played 3-4 and just let the Ronnie Lott and those guys play man-to-man in the secondary.
Well, that's where the situational football comes into hand. I mean, we love, 49ers, please put 7, 8, 9 guys in the box. We're just going to hit the 8-9 yard pass out there to the playmaker.
To the playmaker. That's where I'm going.
And that's all we need. And we can. And not only are we controlling the line of scrimmage still, but we're controlling the clock because we're moving the clock the way we want to move it.
And that's where I was kind of picturing this heading, because I think we lost Brandon again. Because yes, let's say the 49ers offense or the 49ers defensive line stops Emmett, and by stopping Emmett I mean 100 yards or less. So let's just hypothetically say that they do that. Then at that point, the Cowboys are going to be forced to throw, because, like, again, this 49er team was averaging 27.6 points per game in 1989. So if they're going to do that, they're going to get some points. They're going to score close to 30. It's going to be a game of keep up, and if the Cowboys can't run the ball, which is their bread and butter, they're going to have to throw the ball. And I'm looking at the defensive backfield of the 49ers between Darryl Pollard, Don Griffin, Chet Brooks, and Ronnie Lott. They had 12 interceptions in the secondary. Keena Turner would go back there to help too. He got an interception that year. Matt Millen had an interception that year. And the defensive front for the 49ers actually notched 27, 28, 29 sacks on the season. So the defense was stout. They were number 1 in the league in offense. So I'm going to take all that into consideration, because on one hand, like I said, the Cowboys had a much tougher road and rode it pretty much through. The 49ers maybe not so much necessarily, but they were more dominant in their season because of it, which I would expect. Hall of Famers up and down on both sides. It kind of comes down to what you were saying before, Rod, in terms of Joe Montana versus Troy Aikman, or Jerry Rice versus Michael Irvin, or,
like I say, the teams kind of cancel each other out.
They do. They're almost mirror images of each other.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out what's the one deciding thing that would make me lean towards the other. And I think it's more the 89 49ers. It felt like they were never in danger of losing. Okay. So I think I'm going to go with the 1989 San Francisco 49ers. There's something about them that just makes me go, that they would win that game. I wouldn't want them to win that game. I would root for the Cowboys, and I would think that they had enough to beat them, and I think it would be a close matchup.
Right.
But I'm kind of thinking 89 49ers is the way I'm going to go here. Brandon's trying to get back on the line here as we're finishing up this 2-month-long journey into the greatest NFL team ever. Brandon, can you hear us? There he is.
Yeah. Sorry,
there he
guys.
is.
Got berated with a couple calls.
Oh, no, you're good. I picked the 89 49ers. So your champion, your greatest NFL team ever is the 1989 San Francisco 49ers. Guys, comments on this team. Did we get it right? Did we get it wrong? Are you mad about this? Do you feel content that they ended up being the winner of this matchup. What are you guys thinking here? Like, did we do this right, or did we fudge this up?
Oh no, I mean the '89 49ers, or the 1992 Cowboys. In my mind, you can't go wrong with either one. I'm just a
Good runner
guy
up.
who is,
Yeah.
yeah, oh definitely. I'm just a guy who, has played a little bit of football, and I understand what it is, to be in the trenches. I understand that teams are won not only on the offensive line but also through the strategy. But, you got the 49ers, they have, Joe Montana, arguably the best quarterback in NFL history. You got Jerry Rice, arguably the best football player in NFL history. You got John Taylor, arguably the best sidekick wide receiver in NFL history. You know what I'm saying? On the other
Ro-
side, you have
Roger.
Emmett.
Roger.
Yeah.
Roger Craig. At that point, no one had
Yeah, that's what I
ever
was going to
done a
say.
1,000 yards
Yeah.
receiving, 1,000 yards rushing. He's
Yeah.
the only at this
just
point in
next
period of
level.
time. He's the only guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the only
Yeah.
guy that's done it. So
Yeah, you have all
Revolutionary.
that. You have all that. And see, and on the other side of all that, I've been in a situation where, I've been a underdog playing football because the other team has had a great offense, but was able to go into a championship game and win it because we played better defense. And so I'm just a defensive guy. So I'm always going to be looking at the defensive end only through my experiences. In life, we learn through our experiences. We make decisions based upon our life experiences. So me, defense, you've heard me say it on the rundown many Saturday mornings and on shows many Saturday mornings. I'm always going to lean toward the defense because in my mind, if you can't score, you can't win. Or if the defense stop you from scoring what you're used to scoring, you can't win. And I've had that experience where we went into a championship game and hey, the other offense had this big offensive line. They had, these great wide receivers. They had this great running back. But guess what? When it came down to the end, the defense stopped you one more time than you were able to stop our offense, and we walked away with the rings. So I always will look toward defense.
Agree. And I
Yeah.
think that goes into a lot with game planning, having been a former athlete also and doing some coaching. I think the X's and O's, man, you have to have somebody that can game plan. And you can't measure heart, man, being an underdog.
No,
Just
not
in
at all.
life, you can't measure heart at all. And I know numbers do tell a story, but sometimes they don't tell the whole story. Seeing these guys actually in action and seeing, their playing intensity and their tendencies on the field, it's all on paper. But I think the champion was crowned rightfully so. Just some of the guys that are considered the best at their position to ever play the game, in a unanimous fashion right now, unanimous fashion. No 49er fan by any means, but definitely one of the great NFL franchises. So I'm comfortable with it. I think the game planning would have been tough on both sides, just tick and tack each quarter,
fun game.
making
It'd have been a
adjustments.
fun game. That would have been a
Yeah.
magical game to watch. I do need to say too that we have, and I noticed throughout this tournament that we have given more weight to teams that are defending Super Bowl champions that repeat. And this '89 49ers team was a repeat champion. They had won in '88 and carried over into this year in '89, where they were just this juggernaut that you really couldn't deal with. The Cowboys were. This is the first part of their back-to-back. The '93 Cowboys got put out a little bit earlier. But yeah, I can't really complain either. As much as I hated those 49er teams, I kind of knew one of them was going to be around here in the end just because of who they are. They're the 49ers.
I'm just glad it wasn't
but,
the 49ers versus the 49ers.
Yeah, I was worried about that.
Honestly,
Looking at this, I was like, this might
that.
happen.
Man, I kind of flipped on that. I'm glad
How we
the
gonna even do
Cowboys-
that? Montana versus Montana. But in the end, I mean, if you look at what we had in the end, we had two 49er teams, one of the best Cowboy teams, and one of the best Patriot teams. And those three franchises have the most Super Bowl wins out of all the teams out there. So other than Pittsburgh. So that made sense that they made it in there. Probably maybe one of those 49er teams probably shouldn't be there instead of maybe like a Pittsburgh team. But if I'm not mistaken, that's how the '84 49ers got there. They beat the '78 Steelers in the Elite Eight, if I'm not mistaken. So they got put out by.
Yeah.
I think I would. A good matchup.
I think I would have traded the '84 49ers for the '85 Bears.
And I'm still wondering how this would have turned out if they were there. But hey, man, every one shining moment, man. You get in the tournament, don't know.
Yeah.
And when I put that Bears bracket together, I was like, I'm gonna throw some loops in here just to see what happens. And the Vikings were one of those loops I threw in there. Now, did I know that they were gonna beat them? No, but I mean, it is what it is. It happened, and in the end, we still kind of got it right. I'm surprised the 91 Redskins did not make the Final Four. That was the one team that I was like, okay, outside of the Bears, the 91 Redskins were the team I was looking at like they can go all the way. And the 99 Rams. I'm kind of surprised they didn't make the Final Four, but they lost to the 92 Cowboys. So we would end up being the runner-up overall. So I can't be too upset about any of that. I do need to give shout-outs and give some notes here. Shout-outs to everybody that participated in this over the past 2 months. Aaron Gabriel from Sports Hub Triad, Earl Marks from the Worldwide Sports Network, Kevin Avery and Will Harris from the Four Man Rush, Chris Lee from WRL in Raleigh, B-Dot from 102 Jams, my man Hot Rod Funderburk and Brandon Blakney from the Rundown. I don't think I'm missing anybody. We had a nice rotation going. Oh, Ryan Stone from IMG Learfield Sports. We had a nice rotation going on in terms of who all participated in this. So we had a lot of different voices involved with it to get us down to this final. Your winner, the 1989 San Francisco 49ers, 14-2 regular season, Super Bowl champion, back-to-back Super Bowl champions, and now crowned by the Rundown as the greatest NFL team of all time. We'll have some news coming up here for the Triad in terms of some big stuff going on over the next month or two with sports and sports talk in general. I think everybody will be really pleased about what we got cooking up. Guys, any final words here as we're still in the middle of this corona pandemic, trying to make it through, but sports coming back, man. We got enough sports now where we could actually start doing some rundowns if we want to.
Man.
Hint, hint. Wink, wink, hint, hint. So
let's do it.
So we'll put
Give
some,
the people
we'll
what
do some
they
of
want,
that.
man.
We'll get the people what they want and get back to some live stuff here. I'm dying to talk some NBA because nobody's talking about the Toronto Raptors at all. And these boys are going to repeat, I think, the way that they're playing. So we'll see. But for myself, Desmond Johnson, for Hot Rod Funderburk, for Brandon Lee TV, Brandon Blakney, you've been watching a special presentation of The Rundown presents the greatest NFL team ever bracket. Stay tuned. Much, much more to come. Big news coming up here in the next couple of weeks. So definitely keep it locked to Sports Carolina Monthly. Peace.
Hey there, this is Rod Funderburk, and you've been watching an episode of The Rundown with Desmond Johnson. In order to watch more episodes of The Rundown with Desmond Johnson, please subscribe to Sports Carolina Monthly's YouTube channel.